When the Florida legislature voted virtually unanimously to move the Florida presidential primary from the end of March to January, prior to Super Tuesday, they did not imagine how critical the impact would be on the future of the Democratic race.
Well, Florida, with the fourth largest number of delegates, felt that it was too important for Florida to be that late in the process. In some cases, as it is in the Republican side now, it's decided. And waiting for that long for our election to happen really leaves us out of the race.
In response, the Democratic National Committee penalized Florida and Michigan, where a similar event occurred, by not counting their delegates.
I think people thought, well, surely they can't do that. And then it was challenged in the court, and basically the national parties can do that. It's rules that they were able to set, and yes, they can do that. And how they wanted to penalize was up to them.
But the close race between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama has brought attention back to Florida, as many are calling for the delegates to be counted in order to determine the true winner.
It would be a grave disservice to the voters of Florida and Michigan to adopt any process that would disenfranchise anyone, and therefore I am still committed to seating their delegations.
There are a few options to settling this debate. First, count the delegates that were a result of the first primary.
That seemed the easiest to do, but there were arguments made that some Democrats did not go vote knowing that the delegates wouldn't count. So the argument was it wasn't a true election.
In addition, the Democratic candidates were not able to campaign prior to the primary.
They were not allowed by the National Party to do any campaigning. So in a sense, you had possibly the candidate who won had the most name recognition.
Florida Governor Charlie Crist believes counting the original delegates is the best option.
Well, Florida voted January the 29th. They voted legally. And, you know, some party boss in Washington decided that they were not going to have the people's voice be heard. Are you kidding me? You know, this is the will of the people. It should be respected. It's what our country is founded upon.
The second option is to redo the election, but that becomes very costly.
Now, let's just hold another election, have early voting, go back to the polls, bring for us, 2,500 to 3,000 poll workers back in, rent the facilities again. You're talking close to $2 million to do that for Duval County, and probably for the entire state, close to $20 million.
Chris said he would support this option, but only if the DNC paid the bill, something they have already refused. A third option is to hold a new primary with all mail-in ballots, but Florida law currently requires a formal polling location to be provided for races involving candidates.
Florida's law right now only says that an all-mail ballot can be done only when you have no candidates on the ballot. And you'd say, well, when would that exist? Well, if you had a referendum. If we had this property tax referendum that we just had, and they would have decided to hold it last November or something of that, they could have done an all-mail ballot for the property tax amendment. But the law says if there's candidates, you must have an election at the polls.
And that process could be timely.
About a 45 to 60-day window before we do it. I would assume if we followed normal patterns of elections, we would, one, have to get it approved first by the legislature. And then the next thing is we would have to allow probably sufficient time for book closing, which means for people to change parties. Normally we cut off book closing prior to an election. And then also we'd have to have enough time to be able to send out absentee ballots or mail ballots.
And then Duval County's lawmakers would have to decide how to pay for the ballot postage.
Now Duval is a little bit different than the other counties. We pay for the postage coming back in on our other elections. I would imagine because we're the only county of the 67 counties that do that they probably wouldn't reimburse us for that.
And finally, there's the option to not count the delegates at all.
If they don't count the delegates, how will the voters of Florida feel come November? Will they be upset with the party that doesn't, count their delegates? For those voters, it may cause a backlash. And I think a little bit that's what some of the party members are concerned about. If we don't count their delegates, will they come to the polls and vote, or will they be upset? So there's many repercussions to the fact, the delegates not being counted from January.
For more on this developing issue, check out our elections page at jacksonville.activote.com. For Jacksonville.com, I'm Amanda Warford.